Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service on behalf of a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Tuesday, May 10th, 2022, and I have many things to talk about this evening, starting with our headlines. Ice jam flood warning remains in effect for the Circle area and the surrounding Yukon Flats region. That warning was issued as of this morning because of the ice jam potential and things clogging up. So be on the lookout for rapid water rises associated with that ice jam or it breaking up and releasing water and ice. A snowmelt flood warning is in effect for Moose Creek near Glen Allen, the north side of the Glen Allen Highway. And we've had reports of the creek coming up a few feet here through this morning and early afternoon. So keep in mind, rivers are high. We're in the midst of the river breakup season, so ice jam and snowmelt flooding are possible. Things have at least temporarily up through this afternoon quieted down a bit there on the Kuskokwim Basin, but nevertheless, things can change quickly. Overall, we are anticipating cooler temperatures across the interior the rest of this week, mid and late week, so that will tend to slow down the snowmelt compared to what it could be for this time of year. Quick recap over the weekend. Saturday, late Friday night, early Saturday morning, we had an ice jam form that caused significant flooding at Manly Hot Springs, and it affected like 90% of the structures there in town with various degrees of flooding, a lot of damage to report, and hopefully folks there can begin the recovery process here. It'll take several days and weeks, to say the least, for some folks. Looking at the Alaska breakup map, we have the flood warning highlighted there in red at Circle on the Yukon River in the surrounding Yukon Flats area. That's the hot spot for potential ice jam flooding now. And we also have that flood warning down there in Glen Allen on Moose Creek. Otherwise, the rest of the basins, no warnings are currently in effect as of mid-afternoon this Tuesday. But as I said, stay tuned because this flooding, especially ice jam flooding, can develop very rapidly. And what we need from you, we need your help. If you could send us spotter reports, any pictures or videos, you can submit them to the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center at nws.ar.aprfc@noaa.gov. If it's a more urgent situation where something significant is happening, significant flooding or rapid ice jam development that's causing flooding has developed, please call 1-800-847-1739 to speak with a River Forecast Center forecaster. And as a reminder, river breakup, just stay safe and be proactive. Move and safeguard property before high water arrives and ice breaks up. Have extra food, batteries, and any specific medical supplies that are hard to get on hand because you might get cut off for a time. Know your community safety plan and emergency shelter locations, and then certainly stay out of floodwaters and ice flows. In other news, over the weekend, not only did Manly Hot Springs have a weather incident, somewhat weather-related, a landslide at Lowell Point near Seward shut down the highway there. These images are credit to Alaska Public Media. And you can see that slide covering the coastal road there. That's enough to cause at least a 2-week delay. People are stuck. We have tourists and locals that are stuck on the other side of that slide, and they had to be ferried around because it's going to take road crews at least a couple of weeks to clear that out. And then I wanted to mention this weekend I will be attending, along with one of the aviation weather unit forecasters, the Valdez Fly-In and Air Show in Valdez. And I'll be there manning the National Weather Service booth with one of my coworkers on Saturday and Sunday. Weather right now looks showery, some rain, snow showers Friday, but conditions should improve Saturday into Sunday, with Sunday being the best weather day. So if you are able to get out, stop by and say hi to us. And then I wanted to pass along Sunday night, not so much for Alaska, really not visible here. We have too much daylight, and the angle of this particular eclipse, we're just beyond the fringe. Best view will be eastern North America if you're going to be eastern half of the United States, especially the eastern seaboard. Eastern time, the eclipse will peak at 12:11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and it will be a total lunar eclipse. And do expect to see a ruddy, reddish moon at that time. Also, one other astronomical note. The sun rose this morning at 2:58 a.m. Alaska Daylight Time in Utqiagvik, and it will not set for another 83 days until August 2nd. So welcome to summer there above the Arctic Circle. And looking at the satellite imagery, you can see the curl in the clouds there over the northern Gulf. That's low pressure bringing some showers into the Panhandle. In fact, Juneau reported a pretty heavy ice pellet shower today, enough to cover the cars and things, and it's looking like the showers will slowly diminish as we go through Wednesday. Some breaks developing in the cloud cover. If that happens, there could be some patchy fog come early Wednesday morning. And if skies clear out over the northern part of the Panhandle, there is the threat of frost. So if you have a garden underway there in the northern Panhandle, stay tuned to later forecasts because there could potentially be a frost advisory issued there for Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Otherwise, to the west, we have cloud cover, thicker cloud cover moving in off the Bering, lower Chukchi Sea associated with a trough, and also a stronger upper level disturbance producing more snow and a mix of rain and snow. That's going to spread inland as we go through tonight. Now this afternoon, arriving there up through the west and northwest, including the Seward Peninsula. Kind of a chilly, yucky weather system when you want spring, sunshine, warmer temperatures. I'm afraid I don't have any of that for you for at least the next week. Rather cool temperatures are going to prevail here the rest of this week across the interior and probably lagging up until the following weekend. We'll have low pressure weakening there in the southeastern Gulf late tonight into early Wednesday morning, but then areas of snow or rain mixed with snow expanding across the interior, heading east-southeastward. Wednesday, kind of butting up against the Alaska Range. There'll be some reinforcing energy that will eventually force that moisture over the mountains here later this week, especially as we get into Friday. Some of that will make it down into south central and along the Gulf Coast. But there's the next low up there around the central Brooks Range with areas of snow. It'll be accumulating snow, mix of rain and snow there through the lower Yukon Valley. And temperature-wise, we are looking at readings throughout the Panhandle tonight for lows to be still above freezing. Generally, the cloud cover holding. If there are a few breaks, could create a bit of patchy fog. Lows mid-30s to near 40. Generally above freezing along the northern Gulf Coast. A few areas inland could dip down below freezing into the 20s. Glen Allen on over till Talkeetna. Afternoon highs should manage to make lower 50s in many spots. Consider yourself fortunate if you make mid-upper 50s. And temperatures Thursday morning still near or a little below freezing there, Talkeetna, Glen Allen. Otherwise, everyone else should generally see lows mid-30s to even near 40 along coastal areas, including the Kenai and down towards Seward. And afternoon highs, again, generally Thursday afternoon will be in the lower to mid-50s in many areas, except for some of the higher elevations. Cooler, could squeak out 62 around Skagway, nearing 60 at Craig there in the Panhandle. Across the far north, temperatures Wednesday morning we'll still be getting down into the teens there, eastern North Slope and along the eastern Arctic coast. Readings dipping below freezing there along the Yukon River, especially east central areas, Yukon Flats, including Fairbanks. And then Wednesday afternoon highs, notice they've been kept down into the 40s. A few spots could squeak out a 50, 52 degree reading there around Eagle and Fort Yukon. Otherwise, everybody else on the chilly side, generally 30s. Throughout the North Slope and Seward Peninsula, and then temperatures Thursday morning, region-wide, generally getting back down around or below freezing, and certainly below freezing north of the Yukon River. And then high temperatures Thursday afternoon should manage to squeak out maybe 50 or so, a little bit above that from, say, the Yukon Flats and Fort Yukon down through Eagle and Northway. Otherwise, rather cool 30s and to mid-40s there across much of the interior with some rain and snow showers mixed. Wednesday morning, we'll see lows across the lower Yukon and Kuskokwim river basins, generally near or just above freezing. Otherwise, generally above freezing across the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Temperatures will be kept down by cloud cover, cooler air aloft. Readings generally highs generally only in the 40s, though a few areas like Dillingham and King Salmon could get up around or just above 50. Thursday morning lows will generally be back down near freezing. There across the southwest interior and areas along the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, mid to upper 30s. Afternoon highs Thursday afternoon may bump up a few degrees, getting a little higher into the 40s to near 50 degrees, Antioch and Bethel, and certainly at least lower 50s there, King Salmon and Dillingham. Generally 40s, mid-upper 40s throughout the Aleutian chain. The extended temperature outlook, May 16th, mid-month through the 20th. Below normal temperatures are likely Fairbanks through Arctic Village up there on the south side of the Brooks Range and creeping over into the North Slope. Temperatures may average a bit above normal across the southwest and still a bit below normal there in the Panhandle. Precipitation is forecast to average a little above normal across the North Slope, northeast, as well as parts of the Panhandle, not by much. And generally drier conditions are anticipated to set up there across the southwest, especially centered on Bethel, Dillingham, and Kodiak. And we might start to see some warmer temperatures also in that area.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Well, it's now time for your flying weather, and you have a flight planned for Wednesday or Thursday here through the midweek. The main weather feature will be an area of high pressure nearly stationary through the lower Bering Sea just north of the central and eastern Aleutians. That's going to create widespread IFR conditions across much of the Bering, southwest coast up through Norton Sound and even up into the west central interior. Also areas of IFR along the northwest coast. Wednesday afternoon we'll see an area of moisture pushing its way inland a bit further up through the middle Yukon Valley and on the west and northwest side of the Alaska Range. Also be some rain, snow showers mixed there with some cooler temperatures. Otherwise, widespread IFR is expected across much of the Bering Sea there along the southwest coast and in through the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Same thing there for Thursday morning. Still IFR conditions along areas of the northwest, especially up around Point Lay and just west there of Kotzebue. And then Thursday afternoon, we see the IFR conditions expanding inland again from off the Seward Peninsula up along the Brooks Range, central Yukon Valley, and then down along just off the southwest coast, Nunavik Island, St. Matthew, St. Paul, down into the central Aleutians. Pass conditions on Wednesday, Anatuvik will see MVFR conditions become IFR. Same thing at Adigan Pass, MVFR conditions becoming IFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, farther south and west there on the west side of the Alaska Range. VFR becoming IFR. The west entrances, the west side of the Alaska Range will have the IFR conditions there. East side, tendency to hold on to VFR becoming MVFR. Same thing at Rainy Pass. Start out the morning VFR, but filling in IFR, especially western half of the pass and areas west of the west entrance. Windy Pass will see VFR conditions become MVFR, especially there at the north entrance and further north. VFR expected further south throughout the day. Isabel will generally hold on to VFR conditions on Wednesday. So will Mentasta, though. As you go a little further east, MVFR conditions are likely toward the Elkan border. And Tanita Pass should see VFR conditions hold on Wednesday, as well as Portage Pass. And as we go into the far northern end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White should see VFR conditions hold there for the day on Wednesday. Freezing levels, the most notable thing of a kind of a busy map is that notice the warmer dome of higher freezing levels aloft associated with that ridge of high pressure sitting out over the lower Bering. Along the southwest coast, we see freezing levels at 6 and even above 6,000 feet, rising upwards to 8,000 feet there through the central Bering, in the vicinity there of St. Matthew and certainly there in St. Paul. Greatest threat for icing, we do have a weak low pressure that's just going to be west of Haida Gwaii in the southeast, between 3 and 12,000 feet along the British Columbia coast and far south end of the Panhandle. Another area of precipitation, some rain and snow across the southwest interior along the Yukon and Kuskokwim, especially middle upper Kuskokwim basin there, just northwest of the Alaska Range, 6 to 14,000 feet. Upper level jet stream winds, 30,000 foot winds. We see the low pressure there just west of Haida Gwaii and the upper level high located there north of the central Aleutians. Between the two, pretty strong wind flow there at the 30,000 foot level, in excess of 100 knots there, the lower Gulf, North Pacific, 95 knots there over the southwest Bristol Bay area, and also 105 knot max coming in to the lower Chukchi Sea just north of the Bering Strait. At 9,000 feet, still we have that same, it's vertically stacked systems, low pressure there just west of Haida Gwaii, high pressure there north of the central Aleutians and the lower Bering. Strongest winds along the southwest coast, 45 to near 50 knots. Also 40-knot northwesterly winds coming on shore there along the northwest coast. And bringing it down to 3,000 feet, we still have the surface low pressure circulation, or near surface low pressure circulation near Haida Gwaii, as well as the high back out there and through the lower central Bering Sea. Southwest coast has winds around 35 knots out of the northwest. We also see west-northwest winds along the northwest coast of 40 knots, and then winds on the underside of the high out of the east-southeast at 3,000 feet, 35 to 40 knots. This translates to areas of turbulence, surface to 4,000 feet in the northwest, a broad area of turbulence, surface to 4,000 feet across the southwest coast, rising up to surface to 6,000 feet there along the Alaska Peninsula, and then finally the central and western Aleutians, we expect turbulence from the surface to 3,000 feet.
So the sun, looking here from the ground, seems very constant and quiet. But actually, when we look at it from space, we can see it's quite turbulent and active. Space weather is activity on the sun and in the near-Earth space that can affect our technological infrastructure and society. The sun is constantly spewing out a stream of particles called the solar wind that goes out into the solar system. And it affects us here near Earth, where we're protected by a magnetic field. The interaction between the solar wind and the magnetic field can cause space weather. The Carrington event is the largest storm we've seen in recorded history when we're looking at space weather. But every solar cycle, which repeats about every 11 years, one estimate estimates that there's a 10% chance of getting a large storm like the Carrington event that could impact us here on Earth. But we see solar storms almost all the time. And these storms have an effect on our technological infrastructure. Solar storms can cause activity in Earth's atmosphere and magnetosphere that can damage electrical power grids that power our communities, interrupt radio and satellite communications, and can cause our GPS navigation to fail. NOAA is working with its international partners to ensure that we have different vantage points where we can observe space weather. Our space weather observing infrastructure from space includes the NOAA Discover satellite and the NASA ACE satellite that are stationed upstream of Earth to give us a first buoy measurement of the solar wind. It also includes the ESA-NASA SOHO satellite and the NASA Stereo satellite that image the sun and also make coronagraph measurements of the outer atmosphere of the sun, the corona, that can tell us when large explosions happen off the sun. We also observe the sun and the Earth's magnetic field from the geostationary location with NOAA's GOES. So the way we use the space weather information from satellites and from the ground is to be able to make forecasts and predictions, just like we do with hurricanes and terrestrial weather. We observe the sun and look for activity and see how it develops, and see if it's going to culminate into a large explosion that can affect us here on Earth. NOAA is working with its international partners to expand our observing capability. We're committed to observing along the Sun-Earth line. So we're going to do the imaging of the sun and the upstream buoy measurements of the solar wind along the Sun-Earth axis. The more we understand about the sun, the more we can prepare for it and become, just like we are a weather-ready nation, become a space weather-ready nation. And as we look forward to humans exploring out into the solar system and advancing our space commerce activities, space weather becomes more and more important.
Here at the Space Weather Prediction Center, we monitor space activity as it's occurring back at the sun, and then we issue out a forecast as well as alerts, watches, and warnings as activity is occurring. A typical space weather event would start with a solar flare back at the sun. That solar flare is short-lived and produces fairly short-lived impacts as well, basically impacting communications on the daylit side of the Earth. However, some solar flares are also associated with a coronal mass ejection or an eruption of plasma that's blasted off the sun and out into space. As forecasters, it's our job to determine if that cloud of plasma is moving towards Earth, and if it comes towards Earth, what the potential impacts may be. Those impacts can range from a fairly low-level storm that may produce the aurora a little bit farther south than usual, or can range up into fairly significant magnetic disturbances that don't happen very often, but when they do, they can impact technologies and infrastructure here on Earth. We provide information to lots of different user groups, from airlines to the electric power grid, to emergency managers, aviation, satellite community, lots of different customers.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back, and looking at marine weather, starting with the sea ice edge. We still have some shore-fast ice located along coastal areas of the southwest and up into areas of Norton Sound, as well as around St. Lawrence Island, so be cautious if you're going to be out there because that ice is unstable this time of year. Otherwise, the melt continues northward as the ice retreats. And further north, still a fair amount of ice in place there across the Arctic coast, northwest coast, ice firmly in place with very few polynias open up. Most of the broken and open action is from around and south of the Bering Strait, and this should continue as cooler temperatures are going to prevail across the north here through the rest of the week, and especially up through mid-month. So the marine forecast for the southeast panhandle on Wednesday: winds will be southeasterly to 20 knots there at Metlakatla, Dixon Entrance, waves 4 feet. But otherwise, Lynn Canal, mid-canals, channels 10 knots out of the north, waves a couple of feet. Generally an easterly flow around 15 knots, Craig up toward just south of Gustavus with waves 6-7 feet, turning more westerly there, though from Yakutat westward at 10 knots. And on Thursday, we're looking for inner channel winds to be out of the north-northwest at 10 to 15 knots, waves 2 to 3 feet. The outer coastal areas, we expect in the Gulf winds to be predominantly from the northwest, 10 to 15 knots, waves 4 to 5 feet. And looking at the northwestern Gulf, winds will be out of the north in Prince William Sound, 3-foot waves. Kind of a mix of winds, more of a west, southwest winds through the length of Cook Inlet with 25 knots winds there out of the west at the entrance with 8-foot waves. And on Thursday, winds will come down a bit more, still upwards out of the west, 15 to 20 knots from the entrance of Cook Inlet to northeast of Kodiak and south of Seward there off the Kenai. Otherwise, southwesterly, 10-knot winds with 2-foot waves in Prince William Sound, and waves running a few feet with winds out of the south-southwest around 10 knots mid and upper Cook Inlet. Across much of the southwest, including Kodiak Island and the Alaska Peninsula, winds will generally be out of the west-northwest around 20 knots, waves 5-6 feet on the North Pacific side, and 4 feet or so from Port Huyton south down to Cold Bay. And then on Thursday, winds will generally be out of the northwest to north, 15 to 20 knots, waves running around 5 feet on the North Pacific side. of the peninsula, and 3 to 4 feet Bristol Bay down toward Cold Bay, and around 3 feet surrounding Kodiak Island. Interestingly, on Wednesday, you can clearly see that stubborn area of high pressure that just remains anchored north of the central and eastern Aleutians. As a result, more of a northeast to easterly flow across the Aleutian chain at 15 to 20 knots, waves 5 to as high as 8-9 feet there south of Atka on the North Pacific side, otherwise 5-6 feet on the Bering side. That high pressure center continues to sit just southwest of St. Paul and St. George and north of Atka and Nikolsky. Winds will be north-northeast across the eastern Aleutians, around 15 to as high as 25 knots, turning more easterly to southeasterly as you get through the central and western Aleutians at 15 knots. Waves generally around 5 feet on the Bering side. Across the southwest coast into Norton Sound, winds will be westerly as high as 25 knots there, the lower Yukon Delta and north of and west of Nunavik Island, waves 4 to 6 feet. And then on Thursday, look for southwest flow into Norton Sound, 25 knots, waves 5 feet. And generally west-southwest winds along the southwest coast, except for once you get south of Nunavik Island and east of St. Paul and St. George, winds turn a bit more northwesterly at 10 to 15 knots. And across the Arctic coast, winds will generally be out of the have a southerly component, Prudhoe Bay toward Kaktovik at 15 to 20 knots. Southwest to west winds, Point Hope on up toward Utqiagvik at 25 knots with that ice in place, so there could be a little shifting going on there. 20 to 25 knots from the west, passing through the Bering Strait to the north side of St. Lawrence. Thursday winds pick up a little bit, 25 knots there along the Arctic coast with the ice in place. We see offshore flow at 25 knots at Cape Lisburne, but turning southwesterly into Kivalina at 30 knots through the Bering Strait, and westerly on the north side of St. Lawrence Island, 20 knots with waves running about 4 feet. Quick check, low pressure there in the Gulf. We have more moisture spreading throughout the interior. Cooler temperatures will prevail the rest of the week across the interior. And as we go into Thursday, we still weak low pressure south of Haida Gwaii and another low across northern parts of the state.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.